Patrick, what kinds of things inspire you to create?
Anything. You see, I think spontaneity is probably the most important, one of the most important factors in the inspiration of an artist, and that has to be really the first burst of creativity comes through spontaneity of action. And that's what I always talk about. Sometimes I've been able to also been asked to do some lectures about creativity and technology specifically. And I've always kind of said as a preface to my lectures, even when I talk to the audience and so on, that the epitome of creativity lies in the state of dynamic tension between extreme forces in opposition, meaning that if there is spontaneity of action and pure inspiration of the soul, which of course differentiates us from animals and machines. I'm not saying that animals don't have a soul, but what differentiates us from those organisms is the fact that we can have bursts of creativity on a very, very spontaneous level, an emotional level, which really differentiates mankind from human and machines, even in the future. And that's probably the last bastion of humanity for mankind. It is the emotional feeling that we get, throughout different experiences. Through our mind and through our souls, and that is the most important thing. Now, on the other side, of course, the more extreme force of that opposition would be what I would call the prose of fabrication, which is as important, probably, if not sometimes more important. I know that some artists and some groups develop such a sense of being able to build complex architectures in their art that, for example, Yes, as a group is a prime example of that. It's a fantastic way to work as a group, because there is of course the possibility of jamming and inventing on the spot with a group at a level of what I would call the highest order of information transfer. That's jamming in real time for musicians is faster than the speed of light. And that is a fantastic thing. But a group as well constructed as, for example, I'm thinking Yes because I was a part of the group in the 70s, the possibility of keeping those first bursts of creativity and ideas and put them and around a very solid and intelligent and brilliant architecture is really it's really fantastic.
That is special, because so many times, and I know this, from my own experiences with, creating music, being inspired, a lot of times that burst comes and it goes, and without the mechanism to really capture it, and as you said, put it into action, put it into form, is where so much great work is lost. And one of my questions actually for you was, I'd like to talk a little bit about your creative process. So when you are inspired, once you have the inspiration, how does that process unfold for you? Like, do you go right to the piano, or do you go for a long walk? Do you, what happens? How do you take that and make it into something real?
I make sure that as the same time as I have this kind of inspiration, I'm able to remember it exactly the way it came, and that is really not always as easy as that. and it's exactly, to answer exactly your question. I love your questions, by the way. Very, very, very acute and intelligent questions. And of course, you're a musician, and to have the possibility of recording, of being able to record oneself on the spot, with whether it's with an iPhone or a machine or a keyboard or a workstation or whatever, or even, if I'm at the piano, I will play that piece over and over, or record it immediately. And that's what I was able to do several times. I'm still doing that, actually, as much as I can in the studio or whatever. But in the 70s already, I did a series of albums which I called Future Memories, where I was actually playing directly in the morning, for example, on a grand piano. I recorded 2 pieces directly on the grand piano. In the afternoon, I switched to an array of 7 keyboards. It's very specifically chosen and so on, but I didn't have any idea what I was going to play. And I did that in front of TV cameras in Switzerland, in a very good studio. And the next day, I was able to record a piece in 3 movements of 18 minutes on a rig of 29 keyboards and machines, And I pursued the experience in the early 80s, and I did Future Memories too, exactly the same way, but in different movements. And I did, instead of spending 2 days in the studio, I spent 3 days in the studio. But every note of these 2 works, these 2 albums actually came on the spot, directly at the moment they happened, and there was no edits and not even any remixing in some instances, and certainly not edits to make the pieces more more architectured or whatever. It's exactly as the music came.
That's extraordinary.
And that's there's a lot of people who unfortunately like the music I've done and so on, but they're not even aware of that, and it's kind of, of course, for a musician like yourself, you understand exactly what I'm talking about. But for the people who are just and thanks to them, just listeners and fans, some people don't have a clue of what creativity is all about, and spontaneous creativity, improvisation, and so on, whether it's in a classical mode or in jazz, of course, jazz mode. I've been very influenced by the jazz of many decades, and by historical figures that I was privileged and to meet and talk with, and even have some lessons, encounters with.
Yeah, well said. Now, as an early pioneer, using electronic keyboards, you've seen many changes, no doubt, in the application of these instruments in all forms of music. Are you partial to pure form analog synths, or have you embraced the digital synths as well?
Yes, to a certain extent, of course. It's always, once again, it's the same kind of thing. The marriage between analog technologies and digital technologies actually creates really, it helps us to go even further, in the choice of sound and the building of clusters or whatever, and that's really a fantastic thing. Fortunately enough, I've never been attached to too much schooling and too much respect of a very particular style. I know some musicians who are, I'm not going to name them here, and some of them are very, very good friends of mine, but they never allow themselves to go from one specific style to another one, to jump from one style to another style in the same piece of music. You know, and that's I never could understand why they couldn't do that. And you know, the fact that I've been able to also travel around the world and listen to a lot of transcultural musical operations, you know, to say the least, you know, really helped me to be able to do that jump very easily between styles. And I personally don't have so much of a problem, you know, about that. But that's me, you know.
Well, no, but it's a good point, because it's kind of like, if you had to make an analogy, it would kind of be like going to a museum to only look at one type of art and never wanting to look at anything else, you know. So
right.
Yeah. Now, your work with Yes and the Moody Blues has been very influential in establishing electronics in general in music. Most notably, you had a release back in 2011. It was a Live from Abbey Road, right? And that's like where you have a very, it's almost a daring use of electronic music because it attempts to emulate the classical styles. And I was wondering, you know, at that time, did you find yourself relating to some of the early pioneers who tried that, like Wendy Carlos with her switched on Bach?
Absolutely. Oh yeah, and Tomita and Wendy Carlos, and of course, I mean, Wendy Carlos, even when he was World Carlos, and she's the prime example of this kind of attained perfection, or you know, almost perfection about doing exactly that, and that composer, that person, I mean, Wendy Carlos and Isao Tomita were absolutely at the forefront of my influences as well in electronic music, as well as the makers of these instruments, you know, like Buchla and you know, of course, Bob Moog, who was a very, very good friend of mine, and you know, all these kind of electronics, even of course, the composers of the 20th century music, you know, like Stockhausen and whom I knew personally, and Xenakis as well, and you know, even Boulez, and you know, to be able to really absorb all these influences and translate that into a different, you know, array of creative bursts, you know, of work. It's really a fantastic opportunity, a fantastic experience, you know.
It is.
I'm very, very grateful to be able to have been in that kind of time frame, you know, to be able to do that.
Nice.